let's talk about our implementation of armor item effects, adding our flight effect, and see why the current implementation is terrible. Stay tuned to the end of the video. Hello everyone, this is Ali Reza. Welcome to the Mentor Code Lab. When we were implementing our full armor effect, we didn't know how to use events. The current implementation is terrible. Why do I call it terrible? Well, first of all, we are utilizing inventory tick. It means that this method and all of its functionality is happening more than once per frame, regardless of the situation of armor on the player. For example, if I have a full set of armor, without changing the armor on my inventory, it will still come and check if it's the client side or not. It will still check if we are the player or not. It will still check if we have the full armor, and then it goes into the evaluation of armor effect, and it will still loop through all the armor sets, checking them one after another to see that if we have the correct armor on the player or not, and if the armor is there, it will check if the status is fading or not. Long story short, we had to do all of this just for this section, so that if the status was fading, then we would add the status again on the player. Also, take note, in the has full armor set, we are reading our inventory once, and inside has correct armor, we are doing it again. We had done it so that we can have an early exit if we don't have a full set of armor. But still, we are doing all this logic more than once every frame, even if we don't touch the armor on the player. This is terrible. This is awful. And now that we have the events and we know how to utilize the events, we can use the events to fix this whole thing and get rid of this mod armor item once and all forever. Okay, before going into the event system and adding our event, if you recall, we wanted to have a flight mechanic for the ender right. Also, something that I want to mention is that right now, if I have only one piece of armor on myself, I don't get any effects. But when I get to the full set, that is when I get all the effects at once. This is a bit of a challenge for player. Also, it limits the player. For example, if the player wants the night vision with bad omen, with, for example, I don't know, lock and something else, he can't mix these pieces together to get the desired effect. We will fix that in this video too. So we have lots of things to cover. Stay tuned to the end of the video because we will cover everything. And remember, if you want to donate something, the link of the donation is in the description. You can donate any amount of cryptocurrency if you want to. To start with, I will implement my flight effect. Now, flight effect is basically the creative flight. I could go and dissect the vanilla and find how vanilla was doing it. However, there was a library that makes things really easier, and we already have a dependency for that, and it's called PAL, Player Attribute Library. We have this library available for us, and it makes things a lot easier if you don't know how to find the versions and everything else. We have previous videos about these. You can go and watch them. And even before we go to the new flight effect, I want to address something. I want my Enderite sword to one-shot kill most of the entities. The only exceptions will be Warden, Wither, and Dragon. I could use event system and a custom sword tool to handle a whitelist, blacklist, things like that. However, increasing this base attack damage will do the trick. So if we put it as 35, it will kill most of the entities in one shot. However, the Warden, it won't die this easily. The Wither, well, you have to shot him at least a few times, and Dragon is still a little bit of challenge, especially with the sword. Let's go back. Now we want to have our new effect. To show an icon about an effect like this, when you have the effect, you have to put the image under Resources, Asset, your mod ID, Textures, Mob underline effect with the name of the effect in the registry. So I will call my effect flight, and this is the image that I want to show on the monitor. After that, we can start adding our effect. So inside effect folder, we will make a Java class. We call it flight effect. Now what I'm gonna implement is somewhat taken from the wiki page of PAL. However, I had to tweak it a little bit here and there to fix things. But PAL says that this new effect should extend the status effect, obviously, from net Minecraft entity effect. And then, of course, we have to implement a constructor. The constructor, we want a category and color. It's the first one, category and color. After that, what PAL says is to add a potion. So we say public static final ability source, and it comes from GitHub Lady Snake PAL. We call it flight underline potion equals to PAL dot get ability source, and we call it potion underline flight, but reverse of what was suggested. And this needs a source ID, and that will be our mod ID. And this is a flight potion. Also, I need to cache the entity, so I will say private server player entity, and we call it entity. Now we want to override two methods. The first one is on applied, that asks for entity and amplifier, and the second one is on removed, that accepts only the attribute container. On applied, after calling the super, we say if the entity instance of server player entity, and we call it SP, we do two things. First, we say pal dot grant ability to the SP. The ability is vanilla abilities dot flight, but here we want allow underline flight, and using flight potion. I think you need to import some class, vanilla abilities. It needs to import something. I will find it later. And also we want to say this dot entity equals SP. For vanilla abilities, we need to import io dot, there we go, it found it. Vanilla abilities, why are you yelling at me? I had a typo there, okay. Dot allow flying, okay, two typos. I can't code today. Okay, for the unremove, we say if this dot entity does not equal null, we just say pal dot remove ability from this dot entity, vanilla abilities allow flying and flight potion. What we are doing here is basically adding an effect from a custom potion to the player and removing it from the player. And we say that this potion will grant or remove this ability to and from the player. Thankfully, PAL provided us with the creative flight ability, so we don't need to implement the logic for that there. Now, we have flight effect. As simple as this, we have the flight effect. We need to register this in our mod effects, and our mod effects is under the MISC folder under registry. To register the effect, normally we would do something like this. We would say that public static status effect, and we call it flight effect, and we would initialize it under the register method, okay? However, now we will have a problem with this approach, because when we want to assign an effect, if we take a look at the add status effect, we see that we create a new status effect instance. And if you take note, the first param is a registry entry, not the status effect itself. So the first parameter is a registry entry of type status effect. So if we want to use that, we need to change this to registry entry of type status effect. And to register something as register entry, we should say flight effect equals register, no, not that, no. And this is where that code compilation is junk. Okay. Registry from net Minecraft registry dot register reference instead of register. Registries from net Minecraft registry dot status effect, comma, identifier of, now we have to use the same name as the texture, flight, identifier of flight. Yep, thank you. And after the first parenthesis, we come down, and here we have to say new flight effect. And in flight effect, we have to define two things. If you notice, we have to define whatever we have here. It's a category of status effects and a color. So we say status effect category, and we call it beneficial, comma, 0xFF, FF as white. Now that we have our status effect being registered, finally, we can go and head dive into this whole situation and finish our effect. So we added the flight effect, but now we want to make things happen. Well, for my to do about invisibility should be ignored by mobs, we can't do it right now. It needs mixing. However, this part can be finished. Before I nuke this whole class, I took some notes about what I want to do. This is my note. Basically, for each item and for each material type, I took note about which piece of armor should give what type of effect, and then when I have a full set, I want some extras. And take note that, for example, saturation sometimes is on helmet, sometimes is on chest, sometimes it's on leg. The reason is that I want to give the player some flexibility to move between different effects and combine them to each other to have his own dedicated set of effects. One thing that I forgot to tell you is that with the current implementation, if, for example, you have a full set of, I don't know, emerald, and you lose a piece, for example, you take out the helmet, the effects will remain there until the timer goes down. It's just like a potion. This is not what I want. The moment you equip your helmet, you should get, for example, something like saturation, I think. And then the moment you take it out or you lose the helmet, the saturation effect should be removed immediately. This produces a challenge, especially on creative flight, because if you lose your armor for whatever reason in the middle of the air, yes, I want you to drop down. Okay, now let's think about what we can use and how we can use it to produce this whole system. Thankfully, we have some event that we can use in Fabric. So I come to mod events and my events folder. Under events folder, I create a new Java class, server, player, equip, change, listener. Such a long name. That's okay. And this is just a normal class with a constructor that throws new assertion error. We have seen it before. And we have public static void register. Inside the register is what the whole magic happens. We say server entity events dot equipment change. This is a singleton dot register. We want to register a living entity and equipment slot, previous stack and current stack. That's the better name. Oh, living. Yeah, I want that. Okay, open and close curly braces, move to the new line and make room. This event happens each time you equip or unequip a piece of armor. And using this event, we can easily add or remove one effect related to a piece of armor. And at the same time, we can check if we have a full set of armor to add an event. And if we are removing one piece, then we already know that there won't be a full set. So we blindly remove an effect. We say if not, we typecast the living entity. So living entity instance of player entity, we call it player. If that's not the case, simply return. We don't want to do anything. At the same time, I made sure that it's a player entity and I made a variable called player. Now we say if not equipment slot dot is armor slot. If the equipment slot is not armor slot, then return. For whatever reason, we were listening to something happen inside inventory. For example, I don't know, maybe it's the left hand or any other places that can fire the event. So we just want to listen to the armor slot. We can go and do crazy things. For example, we can say if the previous stack that we had is of, and here we can check the item. So mod items dot, for example, let's start from the top, emerald helmet, armor emerald helmet. This means that we are taking out the emerald helmet. Okay, if that was the case, we want to say player dot remove status effect. We just want to remove player. The status effects dot, and for helmet, I'm using saturation from my notes. So if you are removing the helmet, just remove the saturation. Also, I noted that for a full set of emerald, I want a hero of the village. So I will copy this and I will paste it, but here I will say hero of the village, because if I'm taking out the helmet, I already know that I won't have a full set of armor. And then at the end, I can say if the current stack is of, yes, armor emerald helmet, then I want to do two things. First of all, I want to grant the player desaturation. We say player dot add status effect new status effect instance status effects dot saturation. For the duration, if you look at the new status effect and the status effect instances, if you use -1, it means infinitely. The level should be 3, and we don't want to have any of these. And finally, the ambience and show particle. And finally, we want to show the icon, so true, and that's it. Also, I want to have something new. If has full set of type. Now, if you look here, when we were checking the evaluate armor effect, we were checking if has correct armor for material, and material was armor material. Okay, we were adding armor materials. So I will go with mod armor materials emerald. Do we have a full set of emerald? If we have a full set of emerald, I blindly add the player dot add status effect, and again I'm gonna use the whole thing if you notice, and the only thing that is changing is this status effects saturation. So I think that it would be nice if I change it and create a method there. So instead of this, I will say that I will have a private helper class, private void add effect that accepts a registry entry of type status effect, and we call it effect. And yes, we need the player. He is smart, and we paste it there. So we say player dot add a status effect, new status effect, and instead of the saturation here, we go with the effect that we sent. And now I can simply say that, hey, add effect of the saturation. And I think it is yelling at me because it's not a static. Okay, there we go. So if we have the full set of armor, and what are you yelling at me now? Oh yeah, with the player, so player. I hate it when it happens like this. It puts my typing outside of the parentheses. Okay, so if we have a full set of emerald, again, we want to add effect of status effects dot hero and the player. Now, the only remaining is to add this has full set of armor. Again, it's a private static that returns a boolean has full set of armor, armor material, and I need to add the player. So player entity player, and this time I need to send in the player. Okay, the code comes from our mod armor item. Get inventory armor, if not item instance of armor item. It's for Elytra. Okay, that's that. I will fix it in a few minutes. Let's take note that before this we had this part. So we take that and we come down and we say return if this and the rest. Well, first things first, I have this note because if you notice, we were using numbers, and this is a very bad, terrible thing to do. Then we have the equipment slots, and here it is dot feet. This one will be legs. This one will be chest, I think, yes. And finally head. This way I'm making sure that in future we will not have any problems with these numbers. However, I have tons of errors here. Cast first argument to mod armor materials. What was this then? It's registry entry of armor material. Okay, that's a better thing to do. So registry entry of armor material. We call it material. That was one problem. Slot ID, I think, is the thing that I was looking at. Okay, so let's add this get entity slot ID to the rest. Here is the interesting thing. It should be item stack, and it shouldn't typecast. So we have a problem here. This is item stack, and then this is item type. Hopefully we can get the material from item stack. So we just change these to item stack, and this means that we don't need to do the typecast and get the item stack. And now I know that I won't be able to get the material because I saw the error. However, if I say get item and then get material, and of course I know that this time I need to typecast this thing to armor item. And now we have this part as a problem because we are sending in an entry. That value, that will solve it. After lots of back and forth, we implemented what we had from armor item into our equipping effect listener. From now on, the only thing remaining is just to listen into different items from my list, add them one after another into the final result. Thankfully, it's just a bunch of copy paste. So I will pause the video and I will come back when they are finished and when I want to add the flight effect. Okay, I had done all of the normal stuff. Take note that although I'm using regions, after the first if statement for removing the effect on emerald, Others are else if. However, when I'm adding the effects, after finishing the add, I'm returning, and there is no else behind the ifs. Unfortunately, on the removal of the effects, we can't do early exit. However, when we are equipping a new piece of armor, the moment we found that effect and armor, we can early exit. Also, one thing that I will do is that I will take Enderite from here at the end and I will put it right before Emerald. The reason is that Enderite is the most powerful armor in my mod. Naturally, players will try to have a full set of Enderite armor. Honestly, it's a little bit of optimization. However, because this happens only once when you put an armor inside a slot or taking it out, it won't happen too often, so this little optimization is meaningless. However, I had done it anyway. For the Enderite, I have added lock as a full armor effect. Also, I want to add the flight mechanic. However, it's not inside the status effects anymore. It's inside mod effects dot flight effect. And just like that, I can add the flight effect as a full set effect for Enderite. Also, when I'm removing the lock, I now want to remove the flight effect. So I will say mod effects dot flight effect. And again, I'm removing the flight effect from the player the moment he is removing or some item is removed from the equipment slot. And now we have a full listener that will work. However, we didn't add that listener anywhere. And just like the entity callback listener, we should be able to add this as another listener. So we say server player equip change listener dot register, and that's another registry for us added to the game. I want to have one final event and get done with events in total and our tools for attacking and armor and battle system in total. And that is when I kill Enderman or a skeleton, a wither skeleton in particular. I want to have extra loot. I have two sections for this. One is some new items that should drop. Well, that's a loot table modification. That happens in another video. But I want to add extra ender pearl and extra heads for the wither skeletons to be dropped if I use one of the two special swords. So I will add a class, killing entity listener, and killing entity listener implements server entity combat events dot after killed other entity, but not the capital one. That's the instance, that's the singleton. We need the lowercase one, okay? And then, of course, we want to add the method. We can check if entity equals to null or if the world that is client. If any one of these, I want to return. I don't have anything to do. We want to check if killed entity is instance of Enderman entity. If it's Enderman entity and the killer entity is player. So if we killed an Enderman and if the one that is killing the Enderman is a player. Now you may say, hey, why do you check if it's a player or not? Because some mods add some machines that kill entity and they may behave like a player or they may not behave like a player. If they are behaving like a player, we want to handle it. But if they are not behaving like a player, then yes, we want to ignore them. If that's the case, we have tons of things to do. Also, I will take a copy of this, I will paste it, and I will say if the killed entity is instance of wither skeleton entity, and we are player, we want to do things. Now, in both of them, we want to check if the entity, now we want to typecast this entity to a player entity, and I will add a pair of parentheses. So if the player entity dot get stack in hand, and we want hand dot main hand. So if the stack in our main hand dot is off, if it's mod items dot. Now I have two swords in mind. One is the OP sword, the Enderite sword, but the other one I'm going with Citrine. I will tell you why I did that in a few minutes. If it's the Citrine sword, we want to do something, and I will copy this thing, I will paste it, and I will say if it's Enderite sword, I think I'm missing some parentheses. Yes. I want to do something else. In both cases, we have an early return situation here. And now I will copy this whole section, paste it for wither skeleton. Okay, that's the skeletal structure of my listener. Now, why did I choose citrine sword? If I go into my items and I take a look at swords, for example, the copper sword is not bad. It's adding weakness and wither effect. Effectively, it will kill the enemy, especially zombies and things like that. The sapphire sword will push the entities way backward with adding the slowness to them. It gives you time to kill the enemies one after another, even if there are at least 10 mobs around you. However, the citrine sword, if you take a look, the citrine is just adding some slowness and blindness. I'm not sure if blindness will affect any mob and its behavior. It may or may not. I don't remember. But other than that, citrine is not a very powerful sword as it is. However, you may ask, what about ruby? We will come back to ruby. Ruby will drop cooked meat when you kill animals with it. So that's a very special sword by itself. However, citrine, as it is not doing too well. And that is why I did decide that I should use citrine. Now I will say world.spawn entity. Remember, any item that drops after the entity die, it's another entity. It's not the item itself. As you see, we will say new item entity, and this item entity will be dropped inside world, and I will go into a new line, say killed entity.getPause.x, comma, duplicate it, get y, duplicate it, get z. So we are dropping it inside the space that the entity was dead. And what we want is new item stack of something. Now, instead of citrine gem, no, we want items from Minecraft dot ender pearl, because remember, we are killing an enderman here. And for the count, we use random from net Minecraft random, I think. Let me double check my note. Yeah, util math random from Minecraft dot create. And after the creation, we ask next between 1 and 2. Basically, we are saying that, hey, we want to drop between 1 or 2 ender pearls if we are killing the enderman using the citrine sword. Things are becoming easy because we copy it, we paste it, and for enderite, yes, it's an OP sword, so 2 to 4 ender pearl should drop. And now for wither skeleton, I will paste it once more, and instead of ender pearl, it should drop wither skeleton skull, and not a random thing. I just need to drop one wither skeleton skull. I will copy this. I will come back to the enderite sword, and I will drop 3 wither skeleton skulls. That's our listener. The only thing remaining is to register this listener inside our mod events. And for registering it, we say server entity combat events dot. Now we choose the capital one. After killed other entity and dot register new killing entity listener. And just like that, we added our listener, and it happens when we kill an entity. Now, you may say that, hey, if you want to one-shot kill most of the entities, and if you want to support mods, why didn't you add a blacklist and then handle it in a custom sort item with the call to kill the entity? Yes, I could do that, because if you take note in Copper Sword, for example, we have the target. We could easily say target dot kill. However, if I call kill like this, that will not fire this event for whatever reason. And I have to add that event call myself. And remember, we don't have word here. Of course, we can use attacker.getWord and make sure that it's the server word, and then send a sync, for example, word event with the player and event ID, the position and data. And I need to go back and look into vanilla and see how I should set this data for the event. That's doable. However, why to bother? I mean, if you are a mod developer, normally you are developing a normal mob, chances are that you will use vanilla as a reference. And in vanilla, Enderman is one of the toughest mobs to kill because it has 34 or 35 hearts. And that is why I had to increase that number to 35 to one-shot kill Enderman. However, you wouldn't add a normal mob with the amount of hearts like, I don't know, dragon or wither or whatever. If you want to add a boss, of course you would go beyond this. And why should I kill a boss fight with one shot kill? That doesn't make sense. I think it's a good approach. It's simple, it's fast, it doesn't need extra steps, it doesn't need firing a new event, and it is being handled with vanilla. The moment you are dealing with vanilla and let vanilla handle things, or Fabric API handle things, you are a winner, because if things change internally, you may not need to do extra steps in future update maintenances. Anyway, now that we added our event for the item drop, and now that we handled our server play equipment events, we are golden. Now, I'm not going to jump into Minecraft and show you the effects. Basically, if you equip an item, nothing will happen. Why? Because in mod items, if you take note at our armor, we are using armor item, wait a minute, mod armor item, switch it back to armor item for all your armors. It's simple, it's just a copy paste few times. That was copper, this is emerald, this is enderite, this is ruby, and finally we are going for sapphire armor, and that's it. Now that we had done this, finally that mod armor item is obsolete, so we can safely delete it. Okay, now that all of the things are done, if you go into the game and if you play the game, the moment you add some helmet from my mod into the character, you will see that the effect is there and it's infinite. The moment you take the armor out, the effect is gone. If you add a full set of armor, you will see some extra effects, and if you take out a piece of armor, that full set effect is being gone and everything should work. We are inside the game, and as you see, we have a problem. The problem is that our language file is wrong here, effect.uio.flight version blah. However, if I take a piece of equipment out, you see that this gives night vision, deregeneration, and saturation, and this should give me invisibility. However, now that I have a full set, I get the flight effect and lock, and I'm inside survival mode. However, I still can do a creative flight inside the survival. If I take one piece, you notice that I dropped, because I will do it, and just take a look at this dirt platform when I'm doing it. Take a look at there, and you see that I drop. The reason is that I lose the full armor stack and I lose the flight mechanic. And it happens no matter which part I take out. The only thing that is changing is that the amount of effects that I have is different each time. And that's it basically. Even in a normal flight, now I have, let me give myself some tool, some funny tool. Yes, I added excavators, rate that. Now that I'm inside survival, I still have creative flight, and this is huge. So boom, yep, this will drop 9 by 9 area for one layer. Excavators, the code is similar to the hammer. The only difference is that now you need to go for the shovel. So the tag that you use in the constructor is related to shovel. Anyway, we have the tool, we have the full stack of armor, and as you see, it's invisible. However, unfortunately, Minecraft decided that when you have a full set of armor, the armor should be visible if you are invisible. That's okay. Now to fix this problem with the language, we go into our language data builder and we scroll down or up, wherever you are okay with. I'm adding my extra things like the text, the identifiers, and things like that down below. So I will add it here, and we call builder.add. I can add an item, a block, a registry key. You notice that I have a string translation key. I will use that. Translation key here is effect dot plus the mod ID plus dot flight. And this is the key, and it's translated to flight. If I regenerate my data gen and run the game again, the translation will be correct, and you will see that flight translation instead of effect dot whatever it was. And that's it basically. I forgot to tell you that this should be there, and well, I jumped into the game and I saw that, okay, translation was wrong, and I thought that, okay, it's fun to see the effects there. Now you may ask, what if I want to hide my armor if I'm invisible? That is a little bit of challenge because you need to use mixins there, and honestly I think there is a mod out there that hides you when you are invisible. If it's not there, or if it's not updated, then the only thing that you can do is to just go into rendering system of Minecraft and find mixins and mix in into a proper class and hide your armor pieces.
If you like these videos, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and turn on that bell so that when I publish a new video, you will get informed. Have fun, everyone. Bye.